Today, we are going to hold a workshop where we learn how to listen and speak to each other better. I just want to welcome everyone for coming today. This is sponsored by Braver Angels, and you may be thinking, what's Braver Angels? It's a volunteer grassroots national organization that's focused on reducing partisan divides in this country and strengthening our democratic republic. And we've got active alliances in Vermont and New Hampshire. We've already heard from some of the New Hampshire folks who are here today, and we have Mary Kay Dennison from kind of the western part of Vermont. Thanks, Mary Kay, who have been really active. And now we want to try to get something going in the Upper Valley, which is exciting because we're going to try to bring together parts of New Hampshire and Vermont together. And at the end of our workshop, Ginger's going to come back up and tell you how you can get more involved if you'd like to be. Patricia, my wonderful co-moderator for today, would you like to add anything to what I said?
There's an aspect of Braver Angels which has captured me and I think is fundamental to it. There are a lot of organizations trying to bring people together. Braver Angels has made a commitment to shared leadership. So every alliance that you just heard about has a co-chair that is a conservative and co-chair that's a liberal. That goes all the way through the organization. It's an opportunity for us to practice these skills every day. And to me, it's like walking the talk. So.
Thank you. That's great. So you all should have a participant guide. Either you brought your own, you picked one up. Is there anyone who does not? Excellent. So we're going to follow along in this, and if you go to the next slide, Jeff, we've tried to minimize slides and just keep to the bare bones because unlike maybe many like you, I don't like to just show slides. I like to talk, and we'll have it very interactive, as you'll see. You'll get to participate in different parts of the workshop, so you won't just be listening to Patricia and I speak. I want to, though, go over some goals and ground rules, expectations to abandon, and then our first activity will be what brought you here today? Why did you come? And then we'll go into our skills, and then we'll practice as part of that, and then we'll wrap up. So we'll try to get you all out by around 2, maybe a few minutes after 2 o'clock. And a few things I want to talk about. One is that we are going to be taking a few random photos, and there'll be a group photo at the end. It's kind of our tradition. It's all optional. So if someone takes your photo and you don't want to be in a photo, you can just do this. And we're not going to share any photos publicly without your permission, okay? We also have someone in the back from JAM, which is an Upper Valley. Thank you, Rick, for being here today. Rick is not going to videotape anyone other than us, and we have a couple of volunteers who have consented to that. So again, I just want to make sure everybody knows we take confidentiality seriously in our work. So I'd like to go on to the goals, and then I'm going to have Ginger come back up and read the Braver Way. But workshop goals in your participant guide. You'll have more understanding of the values and concerns of people who differ from you politically. You'll have better skills for listening in a way that the other person feels heard. And then you'll have better skills for sharing your own perspective with people, even if they disagree. Like, we don't have to agree with each other, right? We just have to be civil. And we'll learn some of that today. And remember our ground rules. We're here to talk about skills. We're not going to get into policies today. Let's help each other out as we work on the skills. Don't feel like it's a competition in any way. The expectations to abandon. You may very well try to persuade people that you're right and they're wrong. Instead, try to hope that they'll see you as reasonable, even if they disagree. And don't expect that people you talk with after today's workshop will not necessarily use the same skills that you've learned. Instead, you may have to do the heavy lifting and model it for them. And then we have a few other really exciting, we don't really call them rules, we call them principles, and Ginger is going to read them. You can come on up if you want.
I have the Braver Angels Way sheet that we gave you, so I'm going to be reading them.
Yes.
The Braver Angels Way. We state our views freely and fully without fear. We treat people who disagree with us with honesty, dignity, and respect. We welcome opportunities to engage those with whom we disagree. We believe all of us have blind spots and none of us are not worth talking to. We seek to disagree accurately, avoiding exaggeration or stereotypes. We look for common ground where it exists and, if possible, find ways to work together. We believe that in disagreements, both sides share and learn. And in Braver Angels events, neither side is teaching the other or giving feedback on how to think or say things differently.
Thank you, Ginger. And thank you, Ginger, for organizing everything so well today and allowing Patricia and I to focus on the teaching. It means so much. And Patricia, I'm going to let you lead the next section.
Thank you kindly. To get in the right place for the film.
It's harder to hear you.
Testing, is that better? Better? Okay. And Rick, am I supposed to do something with the little device?
No, just
You're okay.
Okay. This is mostly going to be you talking. We want to spend just a couple of minutes and answer the question, why did you come today? What brought you here? We're going to spend a couple of minutes on our own, and then I'm going to ask you to pair up. And I'll explain the pairing up in a moment. We'd like you to pair up with someone who you didn't come with today, someone preferably who you don't know well, so you can get to know another person. Okay? So, you'll have 3 minutes each in that pair, and I want you, during that time, to briefly introduce yourself, explain why you came, and, oh, there was a third one. Just those two.
Introduce yourself, talk why you came, what brought you to our workshop, and then we're going to be sharing just a few responses with the bigger group
Afterwards. And we're going to try to have everybody in pairs. It may happen if we have an odd number, an even number, that we'll need to have a threesome, but we will work hard to make sure that you're in pairs. I think that's the most fruitful. So, when I say go, I want you to pair up, introduce yourself, and with someone you don't know. You have 3 minutes. If you can stand, please do so. And we're going to look around the room and try to identify someone that you can work with through the day.
And we'll also have a bell to kind of bring you back. Yeah.
So we're just introducing
so we're
ourselves.
talking about how, who we are and why we came here, right? Okay. Did you want to start?
Yeah, I was just saying that I feel like there's so much disinformation out there now, and it's really hard to know what's true and what's not true. And I'm not afraid of finding out that I'm wrong about something, but I'm really afraid of taking action that hurts myself and other people because I'm basing it on something that's wrong. So I really want to be able to invite other viewpoints, things that, maybe don't sit well with my bias. I really want to challenge that bias a lot. What about you?
That sounds great. I'll ditto everything you just said. Plus, I'll add that one of the reasons that I kept going with Braver Angels is because after the election, it offered a little bit of hope and a way to get out of my total depression at the time. But I agree with you. It's really important to talk to people on both sides because otherwise it's not going to work.
We would like to hear from several people. What's the signal?
He's saying, whoa, he's getting,
Yeah, we just want a couple of people to share why they came today, if they would. And
Stand up, introduce yourself, and share. Yes, Esther.
so one thing I want to get better at is listening without thinking about what I'm going to say. So to focus on one thing, but I've been working on that, but it's
Practice, practice, practice. That's what we all need. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm sort of trying to listen, like figure out like kind of what they said about trying to listen with an open mind and understand their point of view, while not like necessarily changing mine, but being aware of everyone's to just know how people feel.
Thank you. One more?
I find that I'm walking away from conversations. I'm T. And that I would like rather, later on, I wish I had engaged in a conversation, but I don't really know how. I don't know how to bridge the gap just initially, so I'm hoping this.
God, these are great reasons to come. One more? I saw someone back here. Hi.
I'm here because I love Braver Angels. Yay! I've been more remotely involved than I wish I had been for the past 4 years. But
Great.
I'm really happy to see it happening in the Upper Valley, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. So turn it over to Beth.
yes, thank you, Patricia. Let's go to the next slide, Jeff. Okay, so we're going to dive into the skills now. And is the audio okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. We're going to start with listening, and all of this is in your participant guide. So if you look at the bottom of page 1, we're going to talk about 4 skills today: listen, acknowledge, pivot, and perspective. And we're going to start with listen. And you might be thinking, listen, I'm not really talking, it's not really a skill, but it is. Because yes, I heard, oh yeah, it prepares you to be able to have a really great conversation. And I think someone just mentioned was a T that we spend a lot of time focusing on what we're going to say and not necessarily on what the other person's saying. And the reason that we teach the importance of listening is because we really want to understand what someone's saying and show them that we're listening to them. That's key. That's a key part of, you might have heard of active listening, motivational interviewing. What we're teaching here today is not anything unique to Braver Angels. It's a core conversational skill. And we are going to focus on that, and we're going to practice. So turn your inner debater off and get ready to summarize what the other person is saying. We call it paraphrasing. Showing them that you care, showing them that you've given them the gift of listening, and then focusing on where they're coming from. We're going to talk in a few moments about values, core values, and then looking for places you can agree. You don't always have to agree. That's okay. But if you can agree, and if you can agree, that's a great thing. So those are the key principles of listening. Some of the things that Braver Angels doesn't always emphasize that I wanted to add are body language and tone, not just yours, being receptive to the other person, also watching for their body language and tone. That comes up again and again, and that's real important. So I just wanted, before we go on and we start practicing, I wanted to just take a couple of minutes and talk about, hear from you, the answers to this question. What is hard about really listening, especially people who are differing from you politically? Please.
In my experience, the hardest part is being willing to listen to views that you don't agree with and be willing that what the other person's saying might actually change your mind. After you've reassured yourself you're not going to change your mind or own it. But it's the willingness to hear and to hear things you don't want to hear.
That is such a great perspective. Thank you. There and then there, yes.
We don't always have the time to do this process, and when the other person, perhaps or you, happen to speak without breathing in between, so there's no place to talk in between and break in naturally, then the conversation can end without an opportunity. So there's an urgency to try to get your point in before the conversation ends.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then, was there someone else back here? Yes.
Yeah, sometimes like it feels like high stakes. Like if you're in a situation where you feel like what the other person is saying is like leading us in the wrong direction or is harmful to another person, you just internally have this passion of being like, no, you're wrong and you're harmful. And yeah, it's hard to turn that voice off to like get maybe a level deeper.
I like the high stakes. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We'll take one more if anyone has another. Yes.
So I think all of us can agree that we want to be heard and valued and respected. And so I think when you're listening to somebody, regardless of any of the other clutter, you are seeing, I see you, and I'm holding space for you. And so I want to model what I want to receive from those that I interact with.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. Those were all wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. We can go on to the next slide. And what we wanted to talk about next before we start getting into our practicing are values and concerns. And okay, so Braver Angels breaks things up into red and blue, conservative and liberal. Notice I'm wearing a purple dress in the spirit of those of us, and I see lots of purple here. Kathy's another purple person. But no, I wear it not only because I like purple, but because I kind of consider myself, as many others do, kind of to be maybe more not red or blue, but purple, but whatever. Braver Angels is actually making way for that more and more. But it was, or I should say, and it was structured on this red-blue because it came to being in 2016 after the election. So just kind of bear with the red-blue, conservative-liberal dichotomy. We realize it is a dichotomy. It's a little artificial, but it helps us in our work. And we're going to talk about conservative values and liberal values and concerns with the idea that this is going to help us shape our Sorry, Patricia.
No, it's still.
Could be paper. Could be.
Oh, there we go. I'll just put that down. Thank you. I'm so happy to have people in the audience who can help. The red-blue helps us shape, understanding the values and concerns helps us shape our discussions and our listening and our speaking, right? So that's why we do it. And we have some helpers who are going to read what's in your participant guide, the conservative and liberal values. However, as you're listening, I want you to be thinking about this question: how might better understanding the core values and concerns of people who differ from you politically help you listen, communicate, and disagree better across policy differences? So that's the question we want you to be focusing on. Even if you just pick out one little pearl that's said about the conservative or liberal values, just one is plenty. And then we're going to do our pairs and our group share after that. So Doug Teschner has offered, and if we go on to the next slide, Jeff, to read our conservative values. Doug, by the way, is our regional leader for Braver Angels in New England, and so happy. He's an amazing leader, and he and I are writing a book together, and you can see that in the back. We have some flyers. Doug, go for it.
Well, thank you, and actually before I read this, I just have to say how excited I am to be here. Ginger and the team that puts this together. And you all for being here. I walk into this room and it's hard not to cry to see people like you who are here taking the time to try to deal with this issue that's so fundamental for our country. I live in Lebanon, and I did represent, I was a Republican representative in the legislature, actually representing Haverhill, where I used to live, for 12 years, many years ago. Anyway, the core values for the conservatives: individual freedom and personal responsibility, free market capitalism as an engine of human progress, patriotism, enthusiastic love of country, social values of religion, family, and respect for tradition, local initiative and local charity, and the core concerns, grouping people into identity categories that compromise their individuality, government expansion such as overregulation, excessive taxation that limits the freedom of individuals and businesses to make their own choices, skepticism about the ability of government to manage complex programs, suspicion of utopian promises, and caution about social engineering as coming with many unintended consequences. Being immediately labeled with an ism or phobia when expressing views on public policy and cultural issues.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. And no, one question that comes up a lot is the spectrum of conservatism. So libertarians, social conservatives, populists, and free enterprise conservatives, it's a whole spectrum. So there may be some variability. Okay, Vanessa. Vanessa's going to come up and read the liberal values. And Vanessa is one of our organizers in the Upper Valley. Thank you.
But Ginger really did the lifting.
Yes. Well, you helped.
Core values, liberal values and concerns. Inclusiveness, especially for those on the margins. Diversity, the value of human difference. A level playing field for people who have been denied opportunities. An active government to help those in need, sustain a healthy environment and ensure fairness. Safe social environments which include attention to language. Core concerns: abuses of free market capitalism that lead to exploitation and inequity. Ignoring historical forces of injustice that are still present. Patriotism is not balanced with criticism. Groups who are left out of social progress. Being immediately labeled with terms such as woke and big government liberal when presenting views on public policy and cultural issues.
Thank you, Vanessa. Let's go to the next slide. And here's that question again I asked you to reflect on. And we're going to just take a couple of minutes for you to think through. You can look in your guide, go back and look, think about this question. If you're more on the conservative leaning, pick one liberal type core value or concern that you latch on to that might help you understand things a little better. If you're more of a liberal, you can look at the conservative list. If you're more in between, purple, moderate, whatever, you can look at either list. And just something that stood out to you, maybe something that was a surprise today. And then we'll go into our pairs and we'll do that group share again. Okay, so just take a couple of minutes. Yes?
I have a concern.
Yes, please. Please.
My concern is that it's nice to have these lists, but when you're actually talking to somebody, if you assume because they say something that they fit this, then you're not listening to them.
Absolutely.
So, I would think that you need to do active listening and say, am I understanding you? Is this what you meant? And get them, pull them out, get them to explain more.
Yes, and that's the next thing we're going to practice after we do this. No, I'm so glad you brought that up. This is more just to understand kind of the background. It's not to replace active listening at all. So I'm glad you brought that up, Susan. Thank you. Okay, so just take a little bit of time and then we'll move into our pairs and we'll let you know when it's time to do that. Okay, so people are getting into their pairs, so kind of segue into your pair when you're ready. And we'll give you about 4 minutes total in your pairs.
We're going to discuss the concerns or the core values of either the liberal or the conservative side, which is important to us individually. I'm going to start with the core values and concerns of the liberals. I think the thing that resonates most with me is inclusiveness and acceptance of diversity. And this comes from a long time of living in overseas countries and of having a daughter with a disability. So those two things are really important to me.
So I'm looking at the list of conservative values, and if I'm disagreeing with somebody, I guess, who has some of those beliefs, it's helpful for me to know that what's important to them, individual freedom and personal responsibility, patriotism, enthusiastic love of country. I love my country so much. And it's, if we have things that we know we have in common, maybe that gives us a place to start a civil conversation.
Yes.
And not start off with the things that we're both afraid of, being labeled somehow and called crazy.
So you picked out the patriotism as a common ground.
Yeah.
That's good. That's interesting. Do you want us to go on?
I'll keep going.
Oh, okay. The other thing, a core concern is being immediately labeled woke. I hate that term woke. And I hate the idea that it appears on books, even at the board book level in libraries. There's a book called Woke Baby. I don't think we need to be talking about that when they're babies. Okay. Sorry, you didn't get to do that.
That's fine.
Okay. Let's see if a few people would like to share. Kathy.
Yes, my young and very wise pair partner pointed out that the core values on both sides are actually quite similar if you look behind what seems to be the language.
That's a really great point. Can you pick pick something out on each side that might illustrate that?
Well, he articulated it far better than I.
Where is your partner? Where is your partner?
Sawyer, I think.
Sawyer, you're on the spot. Oh, I'm sorry, Sawyer. Would you like to share your reflection? And I think we're also, just speak up if you might. You can stand up and speak up.
So for conservative values and concerns, under the core concerns, the first one is grouping people into identity categories that compromise their individuality. And for core values for liberals, the second one is diversity, the value of human differences. And if you're just skimming it, those two things seem pretty different, and it's all hidden, really, it just seems, in the language that you portray the two ideas with. But diversity and the value of human differences in the media is or the way the government uses it, it's really large categories of people. So, for an easy example, immigrants, like from an objective standpoint, they fit one category because if they're migrating to the US, that's what people are. But that's not the point of diversity and the value of human differences in the end. Like, that is a category somebody can be in, but the idea is looking beyond the bigger, broader categories of differences between two people who may appear similar just for face value.
Thank you.
And then the same is for the core concerns for conservatives.
Conservatives, yeah.
It's like grouping people into identity categories. It's the same exact thing. It's just phrased differently.
That is really profound. Thank you, Kathy and Sawyer. That was a great insight. Other values or concerns that might have resonated with you and your partner? Yes.
I hate to say that it almost didn't matter what the subject was, but I could feel my heart beating a little bit. Which would certainly contribute to my inability to listen really clearly without judging or without really, having my partner to.
Jody, I'm so glad you brought that up. That is, I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, and I'm a neurologist. And yes, that kind of like getting the whole brain and the whole body involved in these triggering thoughts sometimes is one of the biggest challenges to the work we do. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'll just take one more. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, in some ways, some of the items between these are actually orthogonal to each other. They're not necessarily at odds. You can see things in both lists that people say, well, I value that, and I value that in these different lists. To me, these are almost a distraction in a sense. What I feel a lot more of this is limbic response and having a fear. It's just convincing groups what things they should be afraid of.
Good point.
Of, say, something going too far, right?
Right.
Or not far enough. And a lot of this just sort of comes down to where we get our information and what limbic response we're kind of, those around us are having, what fears and so forth those around us have. Those are the ones that we tend to adopt.
Yeah, I mean, like any list, you make a great point. Like, I mean, use this if you want. Don't use this if it doesn't make sense to you, if it's triggering in any way. Our goal, a Braver Angels goal in presenting these lists is just to have kind of an understanding of some of the basics. But yeah, I mean, the most important thing is listening to the unique person. I don't want this exercise to get in the way of really understanding that we're all individuals. So great points. Let's move on. I'm going to let Patricia introduce acknowledgement, which is our second skill after listening, and we can move on. Oh, Jeff, thank you. You're ahead of the game.
You want to stretch or not?
Yes, stretch. Do you want to lead us through the stretch break?
Right. Stand up, sit down. Lean to the left, lean to the right. Stand up, sit down, fight, fight, fight.
Don't stand up too long. We did a stretch break a few months ago at another workshop, and it turned into like a 15-minute break, which is why I asked you to do it instead of me.
Good. Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So we've looked at values and concerns, and I just wanted to add that when I first started this work, having these lists helped me, not necessarily in a conversation, but in reading news or reading a paper or something. So if it appeals to you, use them. If not, let them go. The skill that I want to talk about is acknowledgement. It's particularly of interest to me because I wish more people used it more of the time. Most political conversations you're familiar with, you say up, I say down. You say cold, I say hot. You say my candidate's terrible, and I say yours is worse. Not a lot of understanding going back and forth. The key principle that Braver Angels, am I getting feedback? Wants to focus on is the importance of connecting first before you share your perspective that's going to be different, okay? We don't start responding with a counter argument. We try to stop, let the person we're talking with know that we have heard them. Example, you can hear somebody by, I hear you on immigration, as Sawyer pointed out. I get that issue is really important to you. And in those two examples, you can see that acknowledging what someone has said can be both the substance, like the issue that they're talking about, the intensity of their feeling about it, or both. So when you acknowledge what you've heard, you might touch on each of those. It's clear that a brief paraphrase, I think, again, with all communication tips, if you can briefly paraphrase what you've heard the other person say, that is a way of communicating, okay, they got it. The fun thing for me is to say, if I understand you right, this is a public health and safety issue that the government has a responsibility to regulate. Did I get that right? That you're giving your discussant partner the opportunity to correct you. I think that's really powerful. It doesn't happen much in our world. So I will wait for the other person to affirm, and sometimes they'll say I got it wrong, and I just turn around and try to acknowledge, listen and acknowledge again. It's just a repetition until the two of you agree that you got it. And some typical examples, I hear you on climate change. A, you don't want the federal government regulating the economy over a threat that might not materialize. Or, two, you believe we're running out of time on climate change and have to take strong measures to address it. Before we, yeah.
I think one of the challenges for me is, there's always been political disagreement for the history of the world. But up until recently, I feel like, and maybe I'm making this up, but I feel like for the most part, people had differences in opinions and were arguing based off a shared set of common facts. What's made it so much more complicated now is that we're not always operating from the same set of facts. So if somebody says something, I understand the importance of acknowledging it, but if it's something that to you is so clearly not true, how do you acknowledge and move forward?
That's an important point, and in fact, it's going to get addressed later on in the workshop. Yes.
I would also recommend being very careful about saying you, even when you're acknowledging. You can say, I'm wondering if this is what you mean.
Okay.
But you sounds judgmental.
Okay. The language is very subtle there. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Are we on to the next slide? First of all, I want to ask for you to think just for a moment about what are the advantages of acknowledging first before sharing a perspective where you disagree. Jody.
I think it hopefully will put the person not on the defensive, but being more willing to hear and listen and kind of see the conversation through.
Check. Good. Good. Yes.
Also, that you're answering the thing that is on the table and not going to another topic down the rabbit hole.
Very important. We've all been in those rabbit holes. Yes.
You are finding an opportunity to clear up any misunderstanding. Like maybe you did misunderstand their concern.
Exactly. Exactly. Any other? One particular practical thing is that maybe they won't repeat themselves again. Sometimes it's helpful to just throw in a phrase, if you can find it. I agree with you on X, okay? I agree with you that the immigration system is broken, and if I understand, your solution includes X, Y, Z. And the one caution about this is you don't want to say, I agree with you, without saying that acknowledgement of what you heard that person say. Okay, just one of those very tiny things that can make a difference in a heated conversation.
Patricia, can I just jump in about the shared facts? Because this comes up a lot, and I just want to kind of nip it in the bud. What Patricia is saying is, even if the person you're talking with has a completely different view than you, this comes up a lot. I do a lot of climate change advocacy. And I'm talking with someone who is telling me about, I don't know, cycles over the last million years or whatever. And I still listen to them. I still acknowledge. So it sounds like you feel like the climate is not actually changing, that we're just going through a cycle. I may not believe it, and I may be ready when we get to perspective, which is coming up, to explain to them why I feel that based on the facts, it's a different way. I still sit there and listen to them, and I want to be curious. I want to understand why they feel the way they do, or how they came to feel the way they did. And that, I think, is an important distinction. This acknowledging doesn't mean that you agree. It doesn't mean that you don't have a different point of view. It doesn't mean that you don't have a different set of facts. It just means that you're curious enough to give them the space to tell them what, have them tell you what they think. And remember, what was that saying, that until somebody feels like you've listened to them, they're not going to listen to you. That's what that's about. Does that help the facts thing? Okay.
Good. Okay, a couple more questions. Yes.
This is more of a statement, but I think that most of us have a fear of not being heard or not being seen.
Mm-hmm.
This is really what this addresses.
And
it's not about whatever disagreement I might have with what you're saying. It's that I really try and hear what you're saying, and I see that you're there.
You're giving that to your partner and hopefully seeing it reflected back. Yes.
So this hasn't happened to me in face-to-face conversations. It's more of a social
media
thing. But it's kind of along the same lines of things that tend to happen now versus in the past. So it's like one of those things where you're having a conversation about one topic, and then you might resolve that, but then the other side goes to like something that happened in the past.
Okay. And one can acknowledge that.
But it's totally unrelated to this.
Right. We can't control the whole thing. And as we get further through the skills, we'll have an opportunity to look at a couple of different things about particularly when to contribute your own ideas and talk about that. Okay. We're going to take a minute and have you meet in pairs. I know.
We're going to read our prompts.
We're going to read the prompts first. Yes. Right. And so I'm previewing what happens after this.
Yes.
Now for a theatrical interlude for our workshop this afternoon. We have two prompts. The topic is policing and public safety. We will have the esteemed Doug Deschner, who just put food in his mouth.
No, actually, are we going to? I think you and I were going to read them. We'll give Doug a break.
Well, yeah. I got the message that Doug and Vanessa were.
I'm happy to
He's happy. Well, we're never going to turn down Doug. Doug, come on up. You can finish your bite of food. And these are in your participant guide. So we're going to read our scripts. It's all scripted. We're at the bottom of page 3, and you're.
I
don't want to. Why don't you do conservative police?
Who am I talking to? You?
You're talking to me.
No, listen. Now, I think too many of you liberals are ignoring the problem of rising crime in this community. It's getting scary to live here in Thetford. I hear too much defund the police and other anti-police rhetoric. I know there's some bad apples in law enforcement, okay, but by and large our officers are doing a good job. And it's demoralizing for them when civic leaders and regular citizens don't support them. I want our town to do the right thing by expanding the law enforcement presence. I know officers can't solve every problem, but they're first line of defense and deserve our support.
Well done, Doug. Let's give a round of applause. Okay, now, if you're wondering where we're going with that, before I read the liberal one, the idea is you're going to be in a moment acknowledging, like, let's say you were talking to Doug. Doug was your partner, not your partner here, but you just had a conversation with him, and now you have to acknowledge that you heard what he said. Okay, so we gave you the script to make it a little easier. So that's what we're going to be thinking about. You're going to be responding to his statement and acknowledging. So now I'm going to read the liberal one. Go ahead, Patricia.
And we're giving you 2 scripts because we want you to choose the perspective that's farthest from your own.
Right.
Okay. All right. So
if Doug kind of triggers you in any way, that's what you want to go with, okay? If what I'm about to read triggers you, go with mine, okay? It doesn't matter. You can go with whichever one you prefer. Okay, so my perspective, I'm having a conversation with you. This is the liberal perspective, and again, sorry for any binary divides, but this is how Braver Angels sets it up. You conservatives, you seem to think that throwing more money into law enforcement is going to solve the crime problem. Don't you know that crime comes from poverty and discrimination? It's got to be solved by addressing these problems. Communities of color in particular don't trust the police, and for good reason. Instead of increasing the police budget, I support funding for social workers. So social workers can respond to those mental health 911 calls rather than armed officers showing up. And then we need to support those community agencies that can get to the root causes of crime. Let's stop overemphasizing law enforcement and take a broader view of how to improve public safety.
Cool.
All right.
So we're now we're going to have each of you individually take a moment to write down an acknowledgement statement so that the person you heard in the prompt, the one that's farthest from your comfort level.
We have some pens over there.
Thank you, Vanessa. Who needs a pen and paper? Okay, you do have paper. You do have your participant guide. So here.
Who needs a pen?
Good.
So just write down a very brief. It can just be a sentence or two.
Right.
Acknowledging what was said.
And behind you.
Yes.
And avoid going into sharing your perspective.
Yes.
Later.
So we're acknowledging what we just heard.
What you just heard.
Acknowledge, if you had been in a meeting and heard Doug say that, how would you acknowledge what you had heard in a way that he might agree?
Paraphrase, summarize. It can even be something like, you make a good point about X. Simple.
Okay, try to wrap that up. And if you could move into your pairs and share what you said, what you wrote. And if you have time, talk about what a good acknowledgement sounds like. Anyone else want to share their acknowledged statement? Way back.
I wrote, I hear your concerns about our community. It sounds like you really appreciate the job our officers have been doing.
Is that, yeah, sounds good. I mean, Carol, I don't know, Susan.
I also used, it sounds like, because that's a real neutral way to say what you heard. And in our discussion, we also talked about anything that sounds like you're making an assumption about the other people is going to raise their hackles, so whether it's right or not. So making assumptions, it makes an ass out of you and me.
Unless you preface it by saying, I'm assuming X, and just being able to make it clear. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, I said, I hear that our community is changing and that you don't feel as safe as you used to. And I agree that police are being expected to solve more issues than they have the training or resources to deal with. What are the things you think we can change as a society to take some of that burden off?
Ashley, can I tell people who you are, or do you want to let? One of our newest select board folks from Hartford. We're so glad you came today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon.
I just found it very interesting when you go into the exercise, if you are trying to just fully and clearly acknowledge, it's very hard not to repeat what they, your interpretation of what they say without adding some reframing. That was the challenge I was finding. There's this real instinct to reframe or to use words that help set up your counter argument, which that's what I was finding the whole time. To actually get a true, clear acknowledgement without putting those things in.
And how did you overcome that?
I said less. It was going to be very short.
What is your acknowledgement?
Basically, it was on the conservative side. It was, I hear your concern over the need for police.
Okay. I think you raise an aspect of this that's so important to me, and that is we got to practice this. We got to really practice it, because if we're faced with a confrontation, we want to be able to be smooth about it.
And less is more. Sometimes less is more. And don't worry, we're going to get to you getting to share your perspective in just a moment. Vanessa.
I guess one thing that I think about when you say that is it's not just about the words we say, it's about the intent behind the listening. Are we really compassionately listening? And I think if you are, it's easier to get the right words out.
And the idea of curiosity and sharing that.
We're careful not to clap because I don't want somebody to make a comment and they don't get clapped for. So everybody has been making profound statements today, whether we clap or not. Okay.
I really, it was the same when I read the conservative core values. I looked really hard at things that I actually could agree with. Like instead of just sort of being performative about it, I do think that police officers have a really challenging job. I do think it's probably terrifying at points, and I do think they deserve to be supported. I actually agree with those things. So it can help me connect with an opposite perspective if I really think about what that person is saying and where I can agree, instead of being kind of performative and offering a platitude, because that feels false, So it can be hard, but I have to disarm myself and think well, what really are they saying? And can I agree with some of this?
Can you agree and can you share that? Yeah. One more.
Yeah, so similar thing to the building front, saying about, well, what can I say that actually is genuinely true? Because I started by saying, responding to the liberal comment, I said, I hear what you're saying on crime being caused by poverty. But then I was like, well, because the way it was said here is crime comes from poverty and discrimination, and I don't necessarily agree with that big, bold statement. But so I changed it to, you make a good point on the connection between crime and poverty. Because I totally agree with that. I just wouldn't say it's all caused by poverty. And so
be honest. Right.
I think that's great because your goal is to connect with the other person. You don't have to get it perfectly.
Yeah. And if I'm focusing on my intent, is find where I agree, not because that could go either way. Be setting up
my counter argument. It's not all by property, but I'm trying to find where I agree. Like, yes, plays a big role in this.
So I just want to ask permission from the group if we go a few minutes over. If you have to leave right at 2, we understand. We are having such a rich discussion here that we don't want to shut it down. So I just wanted to mention that because I do want to hear what Mary and Sylvie? Janice say.
I'm just
keep them short. Yeah.
I'm just getting a little. I want to get clear about this. To me, an acknowledgement statement is something that I don't have to agree with at all. So that's. I want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got
Mary.
I was just thinking about context, just about the acknowledgement statement, and so pursuant to your comment about, do I say less, or do I also formulate something a little bit more that kind of belies a little bit about what my intention is? So I guess I'm thinking about not just the acknowledgement, I'm also thinking about the context of this conversation. And I responded to the conservative thing, and I said, I hear what you're saying about the need for our law enforcement officers to feel supported by their community, and I'd love to work together on finding additional ways to support them. That part was me.
Right.
But the context in my head was this community, can we work together kind of thing. So
yes.
I added something besides acknowledgement.
Yes.
So I went further than
A
the
little bit.
assignment because what was in my head was context.
And we do that. I mean, this is a little artificial breaking in it, but I have to commend, Mary said something, I don't know how many people caught it. You said the word and rather than the word but. And that is very powerful because when you say but, people turn you off or they ignore what you said or what you're about to say. And is great. Thank you for adding and.
Okay.
Last one. Yeah.
Kind of a language question. When I first started writing it, I acknowledged your concern about rising crime. And then I thought about it and I was wondering what the difference between saying that is and I acknowledge you perceive crime as rising, pushing it back as acknowledging their subjective opinion versus acknowledging their perspective as fact? Like is there a better way to?
Well, I think the fact is that you heard the person say that they see rising crime. So to me, it's an extra layer to say perception, but other people.
I think you could just say, I hear you, that you're worried about crime or rising crime, and just keep it, what Brandon said earlier, just keep it simple for that particular, okay, let's move on because we want, this has been great. This is so rich.
Very rich.
Thank you, Patricia. Let's go on to the next slide if we can. I'm going to very quickly go over pivot. It's very simple, and it's very powerful, okay? I almost said the but. And what you're doing with pivot is you're giving the signal that you're about to share your perspective. It's very simple. Is it okay? I heard you. Is it okay if I share something I've been thinking about, right? Or what is really powerful, I find, is I see where you're coming from. I used to feel that way too. And I read something, or I heard something, or I had a conversation, and it got me thinking in a slightly different way. Can I share with you what I learned? It's that simple. And what you're waiting on is for the person you're talking to say, sure, or verbally nod their head. And that is so critical because you're asking permission to share your viewpoint. And when you ask permission to share your viewpoint, if they say sure, then you have the green light to share your viewpoint. You see what I'm getting at? It's that simple. So we're not going to do this whole writing down and group share. I mean, we're not going to do all the pairs for this one because I want to get to perspective. I would just like to hear one or two people share how they might do a pivot. So let's say you've listened to me and I talked about we need to get more police and we don't really need social workers as much as we need to increase the police force. And you vehemently disagree with me. You feel like we need to care, we need to do more with our communities. One or two people, just tell me how you would pivot the conversation, please. Yeah, after you do the acknowledgement. Thanks, Doug. Please.
I hear what you're saying, and I think a little bit differently about it. Can I share with you what I think?
Perfect. Perfect. One more. That was great.
Right on.
I think we've got it, but just one more so we know.
I hear what you're saying about police and how effective they are and how good they are. I have a job in the library where I've noticed that sometimes with the people who are not having a place, they're homeless.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there.
Way too long.
You just got into perspective.
Yes. Oh, would you mind if I gave my perspective?
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. My new mantra, thanks to Brandon who also helped me with the mic, thank you so much, is less is more. Simple, simple, simple. Just so much for that, Mike. Just keep it simple. Okay, so now we're going to go into perspective. I think you guys understand the pivot. All right, now perspective. Look in your guide, page 5. You've listened, you've acknowledged, you've pivoted, and now you finally get to share your perspective, right? What do you do? What do you do to make it fall on ears that are willing to listen, right? Especially if you're talking to somebody who might not have come today or doesn't have this training. What I find useful is to think about these elements, and the ones that really jump out at me are the I statements and the sharing a story. Okay, so the I statements, this is how I see it. This is why I think that we need to focus and invest on social workers in our community or community organizations. The police are important. We also need to do this. And this is why. This is my perspective. And that's much better than this is how it is. Because if this is how it is, you can sound very judgmental and all. If it's how you see it, how can anybody argue with that, right? Because it's your perspective. The other is the story, the sharing a life experience. Okay, so what always strikes, sorry about that. Paper. Oh, paper. All right, I'll just put my paper down and talk to my heart. I was always very anti-gun. I was afraid of guns. I never grew up around guns. So I did a Common Ground Nashville where I used to live, where we brought people together, and I met the most wonderful woman who grew up in a rural area, and she had 9 siblings, and her parents were not home a lot because they were both working multiple jobs, and she had to have a gun and be trained to use a gun to protect her family. And I was like, I've never thought of it that way. And that is a story. And that is a story that people will say, I get it. Everybody has stories. I used to, as a doctor, as a researcher, I used to say facts are more important than anything. We don't need those stories. The stories matter. The stories count. So if you can tell a story, that can be very, very powerful. So remember the I statements, remember the stories, and there's a few other things on here as well. Avoid, for example, saying that's racist or that's socialist or you Democrats or you Republicans, that will shut people down. Okay. Take a moment. Let me just give the instructions and then we'll get to your question. Take a moment, think about a perspective statement using that same prompt we did earlier with the policing. So you've listened, you've acknowledged, you've pivoted, and now you're going to say in 1 or 2 lines, similar to what Mary Kay just demonstrated, right? Why you feel a certain way. And then we'll go into our groups quickly, and then we'll share, and then we're pretty much going to wrap up. There was a question?
No, it wasn't a question, but it was sometimes asking the other person a question about their experience They will tell you their story, but they may also ask you the question back, and it gives you an opening.
That's excellent. And you might even want to do that through, when you do the acknowledgement, going deeper and asking them, tell me, it sounds like there's a story behind why you feel so passionately. Can you share that? Excellent point. Okay, take a moment and write down your perspective statement. Is everybody clear? Okay. And we'll leave these up, and they're also in your participant guide, those I statements, sharing stories, other tips.
We're talking about the police.
Yeah, we're still talking about the police.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Yes, 1 minute, and then groups. We can now move into our pairs, and we'll give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
So we're responding to the conservative prompt again, assuming that we've already acknowledged the other person and that we've pivoted to ask if it's okay to share our opinion, and now we're going to share our perspective using some of the great language that's not going to set them off.
Okay, I get what you were saying about the police force and they're necessary. And I want to just agree with the fact that I think police do need to see that they're important and appreciated. But I have a different perspective. Can I share that with you? Okay, I'm a children's librarian, and I've noticed when we have somebody under the influence of drugs or alcohol in the library, if we call the police and they come in their uniforms, they shut down. If we call a social worker who just comes in and sits down and talks to them, that's much more effective. So I see a need for both. How about you?
Sharing. I liked yours so much, I don't need to step on that. It's really good.
Was that better than that long? Oh, a handshake.
Thank you so much for talking about these difficult.
Yeah.
So let's get a few perspective statements and then we'll wrap it up. Any volunteers? Share your perspective there and then in the back.
So this is what I'm thinking about as we talk. A good amount of what is...
Louder?
Stand. Yeah, stand up. That'd be great. Thank you.
So this is what I'm thinking about as we talk. A good amount of what is potential crime might be caused by mental health issues. I wonder if policing is an answer to mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, the first part was great. I wonder if you could do something with that. I wonder if in addition to policing, right?
Yes.
Because remember, you're not...
I just scribbled that last part down.
Right. You're not having to make the budget for your town. Right. So why not do both, right? Anyway, good. Great. I saw a hand back there, and then we'll get these two. Go ahead.
It's Jody again. There was a situation in our town where the police were called and they tasered a gentleman who died. And I was trying to express that my concern is about the mental health of the values liability. The mental health concerns that might be addressed by a social service person or a social worker person that would spare the police from having that kind of thing happen.
Right. So you told a story. Very well. Yeah. I like the story. That's great. Somebody else was here? Yeah.
I'm too. I totally hear you. I'm concerned though that the police aren't trained to cope with the more and more complicated mental health issues that go along with crimes. Like, for example, many people are afraid of the police or suspicious of the police and they don't react well to being questioned. I might like to see the police supported in this way as well, with training or mental health specialists that can help them.
That's great. And you could add on to the end of that, what do you think, right? And then you could get their perspective. Jeff, are you? Yeah, please.
So, from personal experience, I thought that I would lead, to share a story, I would lead with a question, which was, if you ever had an encounter yourself with the police, and what was that like? The odds are it's going to be, in my case, lots of traffic stops over there. And thinking that I could probably find common ground to start with, here are my ideas.
Okay, so is that an acknowledgement statement or you're making a comment about it?
Is it an acknowledgement statement?
No, I'm just asking, you're giving us your example of how you would set it up?
I would set it up as a story.
Okay, good.
You know, but a shared story. Because
shared story.
Chances are we both had encounters with.
I see what you're saying.
How you felt, but also how you think that policeman felt going into a traffic stop that he had no idea, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you could find a lot of common ground and then share it.
I see what you're saying. Let's get an actual perspective statement, Ginger.
I also have great respect for law enforcement and all that they do in town, and I so like Mike Scruggs, our police chief. Would you be willing to hear a little more about my thoughts regarding social workers? Yes. Police have specific training, but not the mental health training that social workers have, I feel. And I feel it's supportive of the police to not ask them to do things that they don't have training for, and that it is supportive to have social workers support for their efforts.
Very well done.
Nice.
I don't know if you noticed what Ginger did. She actually gave us an acknowledgement statement, a pivot statement, and a perspective statement all in one. Right? You picked up on that. That's great. There were a couple of others here that had their hands on. Before I go back to this slide, was there a few people who wanted to speak? Yes.
I can't imagine how scary it is to walk into any situation and potentially be killed, like for any situation time. But I can imagine, because I know what it's like to be asked to do something that I don't know how to do, which is calm down a situation that bullets aren't going to solve. So I can imagine that they would really appreciate having some extra resources to not have to do that as part of their job.
That's really good. You see how it's nice if you've done a pivot first, then you can go into that and they know that you're sharing a perspective. So it really, the structure does really work. Is there anyone else here on this side before we go to this man? Go for it.
So I found a lot that I was responding to the liberal problem of policing, and a lot that I agreed with. So I picked out one sentence, and my perspective was, I'm not convinced that people of color have a good reason to fear the police in general. Data suggests that this idea isn't backed up. And then I didn't write the specific. I'm thinking of one particular pretty well-known Stuart Lowenfry, a researcher, I think, from Harvard that was very much involved in the Black Lives Matter and wanted to find the data, and then he didn't find the data, and the integrity say I couldn't find it. So I would include that as like, this is why I think it.
Right, don't feel like you have to get caught up in, I can't even respond because I don't have that data, and you know what I mean? Just, I think you could even say something like, you know, I read this article, or I had read this, and yeah. Remember, and again, I'm a data-driven scientist. However, I've learned the stories can be so much more impactful. So don't get hung up on the data. Excellent job, everyone. So we can close out. I'm going to hand things back over to Patricia.
Right.
Our final, and Jeff, can you keep going one more? Okay.
Now I have to keep your attention for this really vital part of the workshop to tell you that Brave Angels has participants fill out an evaluation for every workshop so we can make it better, and that it gets built into the next time this workshop is delivered. If you, it asks for demographic data, but it's only used internally to track how our participants are changing over time.
There's two ways. You can either scan this QR code on your phone, or I know I'm too close to the paper. Or we have a handy dandy written form if you prefer to do that. Everything will be confidential regardless of whether you do it on your phone or on these papers. Does anybody, I'm just gonna push these around.
Do that now. Can we use the one on the page?
Yes. Oh, no, the one on the paper is not specific. That's more for other workshops in school. We would like you guys to do these either now or at the end of the workshop. Let me pass them around some more. The phone is preferred only because it goes directly into their database, but we wanted to make it easy for people. And while we're doing that, oh, by the way, this is our New Hampshire State Legislature. We did a workshop for them in December. We're very proud. Again, Patricia and Doug are the two masterminds behind our work. And we're hoping to do a similar thing with the Vermont State Legislature where we can bring legislators together to get them to work together better and work with their constituents better. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that people have time to finish this evaluation. If you have already finished it, we have a question for you. It's not up there, is it? How do you hope to use the skills that you've been introduced to today? In the future, might be helpful to think of it in terms of next week rather than years down the road. If you want ideas, someone referred to the QR codes in the back of your participant guide. That will lead you to other opportunities for workshops or debates or whatever else that you could take as a part of using your skills in the next role. And the New Hampshire Alliance is meeting in 2 weeks? A month.
March 27th.
March 27th, 1 week.
It's online.
Online, so you can tune in and participate in a discussion, debate.
And Ginger is going to make her way. Ginger, as you guys are finishing out your form and thinking about what you took away today, Ginger's going to tell you a little bit about how you can get involved locally.
As a teacher, you never hand out something to people and have them do it when you're still
I'm learning.
So I do want to say some of the things that really inspire me about this work is there's braver angels in the schools. One 14-year-old just had learned these skills, and somebody said, "Oh, when are you going to use it next?" He said, "I'm going to use it tonight with my dad." And they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to listen to him, and I'm going to acknowledge my dad, and then I'm going to ask him if he's going to be willing to talk to me." And then this boy turned to a little boy next to him, or a classmate, and was like, "Is it okay?" And the boy said yes. He said, "Because we've been friends since we were 4, and I'm Jewish and he's Muslim, and my dad doesn't want us to be friends anymore." So it's in the schools, it's also in the legislature, it's in communities, like we need it so much. So there's 4 of us, we become a little team to make this happen more. There's like politics and family, there's other workshops, but to make more Braver Angels things happen in the Upper Valley, if you are interested in becoming part of our team or just knowing how you might help, I'll have a sign-up sheet on the back.
Can I make a quick announcement? Yeah. So I don't know if anyone else here is from Brattleboro area, Wyndham County, but we're starting a group there today. So if anybody's from that area, and we're tiny, we haven't started much yet. This is the first thing we're going to do.
Oh, this is great. This is
We're at the other end. We're in the Burlington area. We'll have an active alliance there, so if there's anybody in that area, or people in that area, especially if they're Republicans. But I love them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger.
I just want to say that we, Beth and I, Doug, all the team here, our fuel is participating in these and hearing your discussions, hearing your ideas, hearing your improvements for what we're doing, and ideas of spreading this. It fills us up. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
In the last few minutes, Doug, were you gonna?
I just, we need you.
Yeah.
We need you. You can sign up for Bravery Angels, become a member for $12 a year, but you don't have to do that. Try out some of those other online events.
Free.
There's national debates. There's a lot going on online. But any way you want to be involved, we need you. And check out our book too. Beyond the Politics of Contempt. We are starting a newsletter. This is a national movement to make our country better. I'm involved in this because I worry that my grandchildren are not going to enjoy the benefits of this country that I've had. That's why I'm involved. And we're in a tough time now, but you can make a difference. One more? Okay, we got it. Thank you.